Good morning.
Good morning.
It's wonderful to see all your faces again after being gone for a month from this space. Studying in Japan. Just returned late Wednesday night. As some of you know, I spent 2 weeks immersed in the life of a traditional Shinto shrine as this year's Tsubaki Scholar, which is a shared scholarship between the Unitarian Universalist Association and Tsubaki Grand Shrine in Suzuka in Japan. And then I spent a week traveling on my own in Kyoto and Kamakura. It's great to be back, and I want to offer a special thank you to all who held down the fort while I was gone. You know who you are. You'll be hearing some stories from Japan today and more in a couple of weeks from now on our Earth Day service, because Shinto is very connected to the natural world. And if someone is interested in a slideshow, let me know and I can share more photos and stories of my time in Japan, which was a very unique experience there. Our Touchstones theme for April is mindfulness, a term from Buddhism that has become popularized in the last few years. In fact, there's even a magazine now that you could buy at Whole Foods called Mindful. And right here at the Third Street Center, we have the Mindful Life program, which offers classes in mindfulness meditation and awakening in the Buddhist way, although it's done in a secular form. And I really encourage anyone who's interested to explore those classes. I know Seth has, and that was part of what you were speaking from in your stories. As a Zen priest, of course, this is a subject near to my heart, and I'm happy to be exploring it with you this month. But I prefer, rather than using the term mindfulness, which has very particular technical meanings in Buddhism, to say instead something like showing up for your life, which is the title of the sermon today. You know how if you fill out a raffle ticket at some event, sometimes it will say, must be present to win? Well, to fully live, you have to be present. You have to actually show up for your life. And that's harder than you might think, as Seth demonstrated to us with the why is my hair wet moment. Now, some of you might be thinking, what is she talking about? I'm present. I'm here. Look, I'm sitting in this room right now. Your body is here. But where is your mind? The human mind is a wild thing, like a gibbon on acid. It's not just Seth. This is the first thing that a wannabe meditator discovers, much to his or her horror, when first beginning a meditation practice. You sit down very carefully in some position someone has recommended, and you do what you think you are supposed to do, for instance, counting your breath to 10. And some demon shows up and kidnaps your mind before you've even gotten to 3. I'm really not exaggerating here. This is how it works. It can be impossible to count to 10. And I just want to say, this isn't just true of beginning meditators. This is the experience of meditation. The mind is a wild thing. And I thought I'd give you a sort of imaginary running commentary to how it is that you might not get past 3. So, might go something like this. Breathing in, breathing out. 1. Wow, breakfast was good. But you know, really, tomorrow morning it'd be better to have orange juice rather than coffee. Orange juice is better for you. Oh, right. 2. I think I'm getting this meditation thing. Maybe someday if I keep up with this, I could be a Zen teacher. But Zen is kind of strict and rigid. Wow, those Tibetan people, they have like these beautiful, colorful, what are those things called? I can't remember. Wow, is something going on with my memory? I'm too young to be losing my memory. Oh, right, Tonkas, that's it. I'd love to have a Tonka for my wall. It'd be so beautiful. Above my meditation cushion. Oh, that's right, I'm meditating. That's the experience of meditation. I have just given you a little glimpse into the human mind as it meditates. If you're lucky, maybe 5 or 10 minutes later you realize, oh, right, and you start over again, breathing in, breathing out, perhaps filled with self-loathing and a sense of failure. Many people have come to me at this stage since I teach meditation and have said to me, I can't meditate. I'm a failure. I can't stop thinking. And I tell them, guess what? You're just like everybody else. And you might think that this is something that just happens to meditators. It's a special condition, this non-stop commentary. But no, the only difference between someone trying to meditate and the normal human mind is that the meditator is paying attention to what's actually going on in there. That craziness is what the mind is doing all the time, if given not even half a chance. There's a reason that it's sometimes called monkey mind, because the mind is leaping from thought to thought like monkeys leaping from trees, grabbing wildly at some things, pushing other things away. That's the way it is. And some of those thoughts are powerfully unhelpful, like the ones that tell you that you are a failure, or the ones that make up paranoid stories about your neighbors. Others are more benign, but they're all like smoke and mirrors, a screen that blocks out and colors the direct experience of your life. The Buddha himself described it as like colored paints poured into clear water that obscured the natural clarity of the water. Years ago, I heard a Tibetan teacher say that it's as if we are all living inside a movie theater, watching a movie and eating popcorn. And we think that the movie is real. Meanwhile, outside the movie theater, there is a whole interesting world out there that we're missing because we're inside watching the movie. And we're stuck in that story that's in the movie. Enlightenment, he said, is realizing it's a movie and getting up and going outside and feeling the sun on your skin, seeing the clouds go by, noticing the miracle of being alive. It's kind of funny and also tragic that we are so glued to the drama on that screen and that we're missing our lives as we do that. About 30 years ago, I was your typical confused young person. Actually, I was really, really miserable, really worried about the world and my place in it. I was thinking all the time, and most of my thoughts were gloomy ones. I'm not saying that I was wrong to be worried about the world. I think anyone who's paying attention, there's good reason to be worried. But that's all I saw. Maybe you felt this way too. I'd read about Buddhism as a teenager, but it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I had a chance to take a class on meditation. And luckily for me, because of having this experience that all new meditators have of feeling like, I can't do this, I can't stop thinking, I had a teacher who could tell me, yes, that's normal, don't worry, keep going, and so I did. And then a couple of years later, I had a chance to do my first silent retreat. And it was an 8-day women's retreat in the hills of Northern California in March of 1987. The teachers were 2 women, and they had this wonderful attitude of warmth and gentle good humor, which was very helpful for me as I faced the fear of spending 8 days alone with my mind. Sometime about day 3, I had a revelation. This may not seem like much of a revelation to you, but to me, it was a lightning bolt. And here's what the revelation was. You don't have to believe everything you think. You don't have to believe everything you think. That was my first inkling that the gloomy movie that I had been watching for years might not be all there was. And it was also my first taste of freedom. The way I knew it was a taste of freedom is that suddenly I was seeing those green hills. And if you've ever seen the hills of Northern California in March, you know there's nothing as green as those hills. And I walked around with my heart overflowing. And it's not that I stopped thinking, but the thoughts did not have the same power over me that they had before. They were just thoughts, and sometimes pretty silly thoughts at that. And in between the thoughts, I could see the oaks in the hills and the beauty and sincerity of my fellow meditators, all 100 women or so that were there, and the springtime bursting out all over the place. And there was room for joy, which was an almost entirely unfamiliar emotion for me at that time in my life, and gratitude. I was so intensely grateful for the possibility of just arriving, just seeing what was in front of me in all of its splendor. And needless to say, I was hooked. An experience like that, you don't say, oh, well, that was nice, I'll go back to my life as it was. And ever since that time, I've been dedicated, completely dedicated to showing up for my life in whatever ways I can, and to the path of meditation practice, and the commitment to compassion that arises out of actually being willing to look at my own ways that I suffer and that life is hard, and that I see life is hard for others as well. And also, and most importantly, how brief life is. There is a very short poem about this that I want to share with you. It's 4 words long. I think it might be the shortest poem in the English language. So you ready? Life. That was fast. I'll say it again in case you missed it the first time through. Life. That was fast. Or as Mary Oliver wrote in her poem, When Death Comes, when it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing, frightened, or full of arguments. I don't want to end up having simply visited this world. So At the beginning of the sermon, I did promise you some stories from Japan, so I want to share one with you today. This one is from 700 years ago. It took place in a Zen monastery for women in the hills of Kamakura called Tokeiji. It's a short story, and it goes like this. The nuns of Tokeiji were famous for their beautiful and elaborate flower decorations for Buddha's birthday. Master Yodo, the abbess of Tokeiji and a former imperial princess, wrote a verse for the occasion. Decorate the heart of the beholder, for the Buddha of the flower hall is nowhere else. I'll read you her verse again. Decorate the heart of the beholder, for the Buddha of the flower hall is nowhere else. This is profound. Yodo is saying that we all look outside ourselves for wisdom, compassion, enlightenment, and all the time that we're doing that, the Buddha is right here in our own hearts, not separate from us. Buddha is our willingness to face our lives, our willingness to grow and wake up, to become kinder and more compassionate people, to do more than just visit this world. That's Buddha. Buddha is walking out of the movie theater, even if we've been stuck in there for years, and smelling the fresh earth of spring. That's Buddha. 5 days ago, I walked through the gates of Tokeiji, of this monastery in Kamakura, the city of the samurai. No nuns live there now, but for 600 years, Tokeiji was a refuge for women, and no man crossed that gate. Generations of women there practiced Zen, taught one another, and had moments of awakening and enlightenment in that place. I collected stories, a number of stories, from Tokeiji in my book of women's stories. So for me to enter that place where these stories had actually taken place, it was indescribable. These stories are ones that I know as well as stories from my own life. And there I was in the place where they had happened. And all around me in Tokeiji, the gardens, which are beautiful, were coming into flower. Cherries, flowering cherries, and azaleas, and flowering quince. The same flowers that would have been picked to decorate for Buddha's birthday, to decorate the little pagoda. As I looked around and realized that I was standing on the same ground as these ancient women, I realized that they were real, that they were real women. Before that, I think, even though I had known these stories, it always seemed kind of like a fairy tale or just stories that have been told, a dream. And then I discovered that behind the temple was a little forested valley. And in that valley, in the shade of the trees, were many stone memorials to the former abbesses and nuns who had lived at Tokeiji. And there, in a little cave with fresh picked flowers in 2 vases in front, were the memorial stones of Princess Yodo, the former imperial princess and abbess who had said those words. There was a stone lantern there, and then it faced this enormous ancient tree. I could only stand in amazement before her. And I bowed and thanked her for her wisdom. And then in my mind, I heard again the words that she spoke. 700 years ago or so, preserved for centuries after her death. Decorate the heart of the beholder, for the Buddha of the flower hall is nowhere else.